What's up everybody, Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video, and in this video we gotta talk about the Sentinel role in Valorant. It's getting weaker and weaker with every single patch, and if something's not done, the Sentinel role as we know it will disappear. So we're gonna break that down, but the GameLeap website's the best place to improve and pop off with in-depth tips, tricks, and guides, and so much more. If you wanna absolutely pop off and dominate, do yourself a favor and go check it out right now, down below. Now, the Sentinel role is a very strange one in Valorant. Primarily focused on defense and stallability, if you make it too strong, then attack-defense flips feel way too lopsided and the game can feel slow, but ultimately, the role still exists to make sure that rushes aren't running rampant, and the Sentinel role as a whole has just been trickling down and down the pick rates, specifically when we talk about Cypher and Killjoy. Cypher has been slowly getting weaker since the start of the beta and has fallen to one of the weakest characters in the game based on pro and ranked pick rate. While Killjoy was initially strong, she has been nerfed and power crept out of the meta, making many other characters more appealing picks. And in a similar way, Sage has been relegated to a niche pick in pro play, but pocket saging is one thing that is keeping her pick rate alive and healthy in ranked play in particular. Now, these are all characters that make up the bulk of the Sentinel role, and I say the bulk because, of course, we're forgetting Chamber, which I'll talk about in a second, but they have all fallen to very low pro pick rate. So every single one of these is under 20, with Cypher being under 10% pick rate. And we have a lot of pro players speaking out about the Sentinel role, even Duelist player and VCT winner Optic Yay talking about the fact that he thinks Killjoy and Cypher in particular need some sort of buff because their abilities are too easy to bait out with movement, and a lot of their setups, whether it's like traps or even the ultimate from Killjoy, can be destroyed with a whole bunch of different abilities from a number of different agents that cost relatively little amounts of credits. Now, if we add up all the characters that can break them and all the characters that can use mobility to bait them, it's like they are getting outclassed completely, weaker and weaker. And then, of course, a lot of people are going to talk about the elephant sentinel in the room, Chamber, but especially if the change goes through that was proposed where they are going to remove one of the alarms from Chamber's kit, that's going to further push him into a realm where he doesn't even play like a sentinel. He doesn't act like the rest of the sentinel roster. So you have three sentinels that actually play like sentinels that are very, very weak and slowly becoming weaker as every single patch goes by. And then you have one sentinel that sees an overwhelmingly high amount of play, but he doesn't play like a sentinel at all. And it's very weird to even put him in the same role as a sentinel. He's like a sentinel in name alone. So this really leads us to wonder, do Riot hate sentinels? And are we going to get some meaningful buffs in the sentinel role? Now, I definitely don't think that Riot actually hates the Sentinel role, but I do think that the Sentinel role is incredibly hard to balance because you're on a teeter-totter. I referenced it at the beginning of the video where if you make the Sentinel role too strong, then all of a sudden the game slows down to a crawl. Think about the utility that Astra provided where she was a controller Sentinel hybrid, so to speak, and how slow a lot of the pro matches played out. And that was actually not that commonplace in ranked play except for the highest ranks because most players didn't play Astra, but in pro play, things really slowed down. And unlike Astra, Cypher, Killjoy, and Sage are pretty popular choices relative to Astra in ranked play. So if these characters became really strong, then the ranked meta would slow down to a crawl. And I think that there's a really delicate balance to be made. But there is another thing that we need to consider, which is as abilities get better and as people get better at using certain lineups to destroy setups, what needs to be done to these characters to get a certain amount of value guaranteed? Like, for instance, a Killjoy ultimate lockdown, right? If there's one place you could actually plant it to clear sight, but that place is like the only place you could put it that will clear all of sight, and there's a really easy shock lineup for that place, then eventually that lockdown will be very weak. A very powerful ultimate all of a sudden becomes really weak because it's very narrow in the places that you could put it. But then you lengthen the actual area of effect of it, and all of a sudden there's multiple places you could place to kind of counteract it. But because you're making it so big, now it has multiple other uses for retake, and maybe it's too powerful. So it's a really delicate balance, and I'm not saying it's easy at all, but it is obvious that Sentinels need some sort of buffs, and I think the place to start first is to simply give them cheaper abilities and make their abilities slightly more powerful. Like, I don't think that there should be a reason that Sage can't heal herself for full. And a lot of people are like, okay, well, then she's, you know, there's a lot of duelist aggressive Sages. You know, they're not healing their teammates, they're healing themselves as well. We can't have a Sentinel that frags out. We can't have any Sentinel that overlaps with the duelist role. Come on, man. Make some of Cypher's utility cheaper to buy, and maybe make it so Killjoy can play further away from her utility before it deactivates, so she's not as limited in her options. Honestly, I think it would be a really good idea to start slow. You don't have to buff these characters crazy a lot all at once, but there's no reason to do it gradually, little pieces at a time, and see what sticks. You can always reel it back later if it's too much, but it's definitely apparent that the Sentinel role is one of the most struggling roles right now in Valorant, and the identity of the Sentinel role is being questioned very severely by Chamber and future potential changes to him. So I really want to pass the question on to you. How do you feel about the Sentinel role? How do you feel about Cypher, Killjoy, and even Sage? And what would you do if you were in charge in Valorant? Definitely let me know down below. And the GameLeap website is the best place to pop off and dominate, where we have in-depth rating guides over every single Sentinel. So if you want to pop off and dominate and climb really easily, do yourself a favor and go check it out right now down below.